Святий Боже, святий ти, святий безсмертний, помилуй нас.
Спочилим слугам Твоїм, батькам, матерям, дітям, братам і сестрам нашим, що голодом і поневіряннями були замучені, яких безчисленність імен Ти сам знаєш, Господи, і сотвори їм вічною пам'ять.
It's a deliberate famine to inflict death by hunger, carry out against the Ukrainian people. Millions of people died of starvation and countless others were deported, imprisoned, or executed at the hands of Joseph Stalin's regime. See, my mom experienced famine when she was just a teenager at that time in the 30s because Japan invaded China. She often talked about having to eat bark, grass, mixed sand with rice in order to survive. And her mom didn't, her other younger brother did not. And yet, history repeats itself because we didn't learn. The first Ukrainian Canadian member of parliament, Michael Lukovich, said in the House of Commons, he asked, where was our world conscience?
I come from a family that survived Holodomor. My great-grandfather, Ivan Yastrebov, who passed away 4 years ago at the age of 94, was just 6 years old when the Stalin regime unleashed a massive famine on the Kherson region, where I come from, one of the Ukraine's largest agricultural areas. The little food they managed to keep was hidden in the forest, buried under the soil because anything left at home could be confiscated. They survived on grass, wild plants, mushrooms, and small birds they managed to catch. My great-grandfather survived, but millions of Ukrainians did not. He carried the trauma of starvation throughout his life. For instance, he never allowed breadcrumbs to be wiped off the table after a meal. To him, food was sacred, a lesson he learned in childhood when every crumb meant survival. It was Canada, and in particular the Ukrainian community here, that played a crucial role in securing international recognition of the Holodomor as a genocide of the Ukrainian people.
19 people per minute, 1,200 per hour, and 28,000 per day were dying of famine at the height of the Holodomor. The world was silent, and millions died as a result. Last week, we commemorated 1,000 days since Russia's further invasion of Ukraine, and for 1,000 days, Russia's been committing genocide in Ukraine, deporting Ukrainian children to Russia, torturing, raping, and killing civilians, mainly women and children, and they've committed untold horrors against the Crimean Tatars, the indigenous people of Crimea, in Crimea since 2014. The only way to stop this is for Canada and our allies to give Ukraine the support it needs to ensure they can liberate all of its people, to ensure that Ukraine wins this war decisively. If Russia wins, Canadians will be next in defending ourselves against Russian aggression. Our brothers and sisters, our sons and daughters will be next, whether it's in Europe or in the Canadian Arctic or somewhere else. I want to ask all of you who are here today, those of you who are watching at home, I ask you to write to your member of parliament, write to the leader of every political party in this country, and tell them that you expect Canada to provide, and our allies together, to provide Ukraine with the support it needs to decisively win this war. So we can stop having solemn commemorations like this, so we can stop commemorating 1,000 days of Ukrainian courage and 1,000 days of Russian genocide, and frankly, 1,000 days of history repeating itself, and instead commemorate the number of days since Ukraine's victory, since Ukrainians regained their freedom and security, and since as Canadians, we regained ours.
As one popular saying put it, where the hammer and sickle is, hunger and death will surely follow. As Canadians of Ukrainian heritage gather across our country to mark this solemn date, Conservatives stand in absolute solidarity with the Ukrainian people. Canada has officially recognized Holodomor for what it is, a genocide in 2008. Today, as another criminal regime, murderous regime in Russia, in Moscow, attempts to devastate and destroy the Ukrainian people, it is more important than ever that we stand in solidarity with Ukraine, with the Ukrainian people, and we never forget the atrocities of the past. Slava Ukraini!
We are here on behalf of our Premier to express to you total commitment to your freedom and your sovereignty in the ongoing assault on your language, culture, identity, and land. And there's a reason why. A year ago at St. Demetrius, our government announced that we will be the first in Canada to mandate Holodomor education in the curriculum so that our children learn from our history so that we are not doomed to repeat it. That bus, that amazing national tour bus, is funded by our government and our Premier because we want to bring the horrors of the past to the light to our kids so they understand what your grandparents and families were afflicted by. The fact that every Ukrainian family could point to someone that was lost at the hands of Soviet evil. You know, my colleague Sharif Sabawi just introduced in the legislature Ukrainian Heritage Month, which is now going through Ontario's legislature. It will be the first time Ontario will recognize your pride in your history and in your heritage that is rich. And it can never be destroyed by Vladimir Putin or anyone who attempts to do so.
I'm here because I was asked to come and because I feel such a special attachment, not just to this community and to this cause, but to this place. I was privileged to be able to complete a job that had been years in the making to find this place, to have this memorial placed here so that the Holodomor could be commemorated each and every year. It was mentioned, and I'll just conclude on this note, that I visited Ukraine, and I had the privilege of doing that after I stepped aside as mayor. But I'll just say that I found that visit to be both heartwarming and heartbreaking. The heartbreaking part was to actually stand with mothers who had lost their sons, mainly sons, in the war, at their graves, to see the mass graves that did exist there, to see destroyed schools and residences in communities in Ukraine, free and independent people who were killed in atrocities committed by the Russians. It was shocking for somebody like me who's lived my whole life here to be got out of bed 3 nights out of the 5 I was there to have to rush into the subway because there were air raids going on. This is not the kind of thing that you experience, thank goodness, in this country, but which people in Ukraine are experiencing all the time. But I will just say the heartwarming part of it was the resilience that I saw in the people there. The people that I met, even those mothers standing beside the graves of their sons, were people who were in solidarity with carrying on and fighting the good fight to make sure that this war is won. And so it is with that spirit in my own mind, that of being heartbroken, but also being heartwarmed, that I'm here to say that I still stand in solidarity. It's in my blood, it's in my heart to stand with this community and make sure that we don't forget what happened in the 1930s, but that we also never forget and never take our eyes away from what's happening today until that war is won. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini.
We need to make sure that we are educating another generation so that they remember the lessons, they know what happened, they know the history, and they remember what happened. And then we are also here to learn from that past, to redouble our efforts, to make sure that Ukraine is victorious in fighting back against this current invasion. I want to thank also Mykola Letishko. It is such an honor to have you here, sir. We've had conversations in previous years, but have an eyewitness and someone who survived the Holodomor, it's so important that we pass on to you and pass on your message and the lessons that you've taught us to make sure that future generations learn the lessons of the Holodomor.
Але тоді ще не існували навіть слова, такі як Голодомор чи геноцид. Такого ще слова ніхто не знав. Тоді, коли почався голод, дійсно, у 30-му, 31-му, 32-му, 3-му, це вже був так званий пік умирання людей. без їжі. І це в час миру не було ніде війни і доброго урожаю, бо Совєтський Союз тоді вислав за кордон, продали 4 мільйони тонн збіжжя. Не забувайте за той жахливий історичний період у українській історії. Слава Україні!
This stands in the context of hundreds of years of Russian attempts to eliminate Ukraine. Russian leadership and many of its people do not view Ukraine as a nation and would like it to be exterminated, replaced as an arm of the Russian Empire. Yet for despite far too many years, persecution of our religion, our culture, our language, and traditions, Ukraine still continues to demonstrate resilience, courage, and strength. Ukrainians continue to fight, continue to lead, to innovate, much to the amazement and admiration of many. On behalf of the Ukrainian World Congress, I would like to express my profound gratitude and respect to UCC Toronto, UCC Ontario, UCC Canada for their tireless work and leadership and volunteers, and also to the many, many organizations across Canada which are working together to make this happen.